Here in our Washington bureau are Kevin Cirilli and Molly Hooper. Kevin is chief correspondent for Bloomberg TV, and Molly is a congressional reporter for The Hill. I just think of them as professional troublemakers. But
that we are.
Pretty much true, right?
Yeah, it's 110% true.
Let's start with a clip President Trump posted on Twitter Wednesday night. Here's a portion of it.
Comey acted in an outrageous way. I think he should take a hard look at what he has done, and I think it would not be a bad thing for the American people if he did step down.
And do you believe that Jim Comey should resign, Senator Reid?
Of course.
Did you want to see him gone?
So it's absolutely true that Democrats have been very critical of James Comey, and many of us did call for his resignation. It's hard to be.
So the White House says that Democrats wanted Comey out, too. What are they whining about?
I don't know, but it's interesting. Today, I was talking to some senators off camera, one or two Republicans who actually pointed to the fact that they were kind of surprised when Donald Trump took office, and within the first week he met with Comey. Comey came into the office, and there's this big, oh, here's my man, right. Comey. I mean, and then recently we saw that Trump said that he has confidence in Comey, and then yet this week, yesterday, what happened?
Yeah. And well, I'm asking you. You're the expert.
Well, they point to the letter by Rosenstein and say, these are legitimate reasons, but question the timing.
Do you think that the Rosenstein letter was Rosenstein's idea, or did Trump say, "Give me a letter"?
That's I think the big question. But timing is everything, and the Republicans are arguing that the Democrats are being hypocritical. But here's the problem for the White House: is that it's not just Democrats. It's that it's senators and Republicans, a small number right now, but potentially who pose the biggest risk. Is that the more Republicans who raise questions, and that's where they're at right now. Not many Republicans, I don't believe any, are calling for a special prosecutor, with the exception of Senator John McCain calling for an independent counsel. But right now, any Republicans who continue to pose questions to the Republican-controlled White House put at risk, from a policy standpoint, the administration's effort to walk and chew gum at the same time, to pass tax reform, to pass health care.
Yeah, that's just one of the questions I was going to get to. Does this really interfere with their agenda on policy issues?
Well, I mean, if you look at the sort of progress they were making, I mean, if you look at the number one, the health care effort sort of stopped in the Senate, or at least it was put on pause because you had Republican senators forming a working group. They weren't going to take up the House bill that was passed, that was anathema to so many Democrats. So some Democrats saw that as a positive sign. Also, you had the funding bill that went through with a lot of Democratic priorities that were included. So there was this feeling of, hey, we're going to work together. But then this happens, and all of a sudden, number one, the spotlight's back on Russia more than it was before.
Self-inflicted.
Self-inflicted. And number two, you have Republicans, like Kevin was saying. I was talking to the Homeland Security Government Affairs Chairman, Ron Johnson, today, and, he isn't calling for an investigation. He said, I want to talk to our Intel Committee Chairman and Vice Chairman to find out what's going on, and then if we need to go there, perhaps that's where we need to go.
Are we going to end up with a special prosecutor eventually?
Democrats would hope so.
Do you think so?
Look, I mean, here's the bottom line. Former Director James Comey, he'll be in the Senate next week at a private meeting at the urging of not just Democrats, but also Republicans who want to hear from him. And then on the flip side of that, this administration wanted to seize on perceived political capital that they feel they had gained after passing health care out of the House the other week. It was perceived because, look, it's a Republican-controlled Senate, and the wind has been taken out of the sails for any momentum as a result of today's news flow. And that, I think, for any policy watchers, is the big takeaway.
Was it a mistake to fire Comey, or was it a mistake to do it at this time and in this way?
It was a mistake not to have a plan to how to communicate the message. It was a mistake for the ambassador, with respect to the foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov, to absolutely, I guess, not be tough enough to have American reporters take questions today. The optics that this White House continues to put forth with respect to Russia, it's tone deaf, it's out of touch, and quite frankly, it borders on un-American.
Well, the interesting thing is one Republican senator said to me, did I hear that Kislyak is going to be in that meeting with the president, the ambassador to Russia, who was in trouble because, who was part of the Michael Flynn story.
And we didn't know about it.
And we didn't know about it. Is it true that Kislyak is going to be there? And they were just sort of apoplectic about it, apoplectic, because Again, it is. It's the optics. And that's the problem, especially since there had been sort of some kind of momentum going towards bipartisanship.
Perception is reality, and the messaging, again, coming out of the White House, it's reminiscent of what happened when they first tried to have the botched rollout of the immigration executive orders. Look, they are absolutely right to make the case that several top Democrats from the campaign on have raised the concern that about Director Comey. They're absolutely right to make that case. The problem is they didn't make the case.
Well, and the other thing is you have Republicans who say, again, when going back to your question, is it, should Comey have been fired or was it just the timing? The timing is really difficult because Comey was up on the Hill just last week, almost in tears over being, quote, mildly nauseous, which reportedly upset
Donald Trump. What Democrats love about this is you've got the guy who is overseeing the investigation into the Russia connection and Trump fires him. I mean, you can really make that look bad, even if it's really just that they just wanted to fire him. It looks bad. Well,
and again, that's where he's got it. The messaging was not planned out. And the fact that President Trump had called Schumer, McConnell, Ryan, McCarthy. He called the Judiciary Committee chairman, and he didn't call, James Comey, who was off in L.A. He was like, by the way, I'm going to fire this guy. I'm going to fire him. But he never calls the guy who's getting fired. And that was seen as bad form.
Senator Jeff Flake, Republican of Arizona, who I think we all know is a pretty sensible guy, said there's no rationale for Comey's firing. What is moving Republicans like him to defy the president on this?
Not having the political capital. And look, I mean, this is the wall between the White House right now and getting a legislative win, is being able to work with senators like Senator Sass and Senator Flake. I would take a broader step back from a geopolitical global standpoint right now. Because look, President Trump is set to make his first international trip overseas in a little more than a week. And he's going to be going to Brussels, and he's going to be talking to NATO allies. And when you talk to foreign counterparts around the world, they had strong concerns about the rhetoric from then candidate Donald Trump, particularly as it pertains to NATO. He then reversed course and eased those concerns. People like German Chancellor Angela Merkel, the other week House Speaker Paul Ryan traveling to the United Kingdom to deliver a speech, again, critical of Russia, saying directly that Russia meddled in the 2016 presidential election and calling for stronger ties in NATO. When President Trump steps off of Air Force One and then meets at the NATO summit and then has this questions at home about whether or not he fired the FBI director because of an investigation into Russia, what message does that send to NATO allies? That's where this truly matters, is the policy, not just the politics.
And if you look at those Republican senators like a Jeff Flake, they weren't necessarily in his camp when he became the nominee. There were a lot of Republican senators and members of Congress who are not beholden to Donald Trump. They don't feel any loyalty to him necessarily. Look at what Jason Chaffetz, Oversight Committee chairman, did today. Late today, he said, by the way, I'm writing to the Inspector General of the Justice Department, who's already looking into, how the FBI handled the investigation into Hillary Clinton's emails. And by the way, can you also look into the firing of James Comey? And this is a Republican chairman of an oversight committee. Keep in mind, he's not running for office again. Well, he's not running for Congress again. But that's what Trump is dealing with right now.
Well, are you ready to predict whether there will be a special prosecutor or an independent counsel of some sort, or is it too early?
Ooh,
I don't predict, I just report. But let me tell you this. Here's what I
smart man.
But here's what I will say. Here's what I will say. That the calls for a special prosecutor have only grown louder, and this administration, again, is absolutely right to call out Democrats for being hypocritical, for calling for James Comey's resignation, and then totally reversing course. That said, this administration cannot move forward with their legislative priorities until they put this issue behind them, until these internal investigations within the intelligence community are brought forward, until there's the public theater that finally concludes what went on with Russia. Until that happens, and let's be frank, I think you're also going to be hearing a lot about what former President Barack Obama did not do.
Well, exactly.
In terms of navigating and refereeing and bringing justice to what happened with the 2016 an election.
Well, also the danger of the special prosecutor is that there's special rules for special prosecutors. They have to have subpoena power. Look at Patrick Fitzgerald with the Valerie Plame investigation. Even Democrats who would want a special prosecutor, it might be a double-edged sword to keep in mind. How did we find out that Michael Flynn misled Vice President Trump? From a leak. Where did that leak come from? And that's something Republicans want investigated. If I'm a special prosecutor and I have the power of my investigation and you can't touch me, I can go anywhere I want.
Yeah.
Ask Louis Freeh.
Yeah.
I know. Ask Louis Freeh. And ask
Louis.
Bill Clinton how much he liked it.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Careful what you wish for, Washington.
How big a deal is the subpoena to Michael Flynn?
You know what? He missed a deadline. That's the thing. He said a few weeks ago he came out with his attorney, and this is for the intelligence investigation, the Intelligence Committee investigation into Russian interference, and he said, I will talk to you if you grant me immunity. But I'm not going to give you anything unless you grant me immunity. So yesterday was the deadline for him to get these records that related to the meetings he had with any sort of Russian individual or Russian Russians between the time President Trump announced his campaign and inauguration, and he didn't meet the deadline. I mean, there were also several other individuals who had to, turn over documents. Carter Page was one of them. Right. He turned them over. Paul Manafort was another, and so is Roger Stone. Chairman Burr said
Roger Stone would welcome the opportunity to testify. Something tells me he would welcome the opportunity to testify within the before all those cameras.
You mean because he has great things to say, or because that's just the way he is?
Both. Both. But I would just say, look, what we're talking about, all of the back and forth, it's like a hockey match.
It
I
is.
mean, and regardless.
Where's Vladimir Putin?
Well, right. That's my point. Is that regardless of what we're talking about, the 2016 Russia meddling, this is still Russia meddling.
Oh.
I mean, dominating the discourse, setting the political
Real
discourse.
Quickly, is the Russia meddling investigation going to be with us for the entire 4 years of Trump?
Is it going to last 4 years?
Yeah. I mean, is it going to be an issue for 4 years?
Well, until they can put it behind them.
Yeah.
I think there has to be
can they put it behind them in this
results from the investigations have to be put forth, and until the investigations conclude, this will continue.
Well, did Hillary Clinton ever escape Benghazi?
No, they go on and on. Great. Well, Kevin Cirilli and Molly Hooper, thank you both.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Terrific.